Appendix. The Americanization of Bolshevism, 1944. To Bolshevize America it is necessary to Americanize Bolshevism. It is time to begin. But we do not begin by writing some articles in La Lion about the Bolshevik and Menshevik struggle in 1903, trying to make the readers party-minded by describing what our VE comrades in X did or the 7 in Y nearly did. No. We begin by getting a theoretical orientation and basis. Nothing can be more misleading than the idea that Americanization means seeking historical examples of revolutionary American parties and American heroes of labor with which to inspire the American workers and season our journalists. Every great revolution is a truly national revolution, in that it represents not only the historic but the immediate interests of the nation and is recognized as such. But every party which leads such a revolution is also a national party rooted in the economic and social life, history, and tradition of the nation. Its own class ideology is cast in the national mold and is an integral part of the national social structure. In my article on Sidney Hook, signed Abuli, October 1943, NMI International, I tried to show how truly Russian and national was Lenin, the greatest internationalist of the age. The Bolshevik Party was the same. And we shall see, it was so from its very beginning. The W. Orkers PRD is not that. It is a long, long way from that. It has got to turn its head in that direction. A huge task if ever there was one, calling for the theoretical and practical energy of a high order. As usual, our only model is Lenin, the leader of the only effective Bolshevik party which history has known, and like the one we aim at, build from the ground up. Lenin spent 6 years in preparation for his task, mastering the volumes of Capital that had appeared, Anti-Düring, etc. He arrived in Petersburg in 1894 and from that time to 1914 his life's work was to translate Marxism into Russian terms for the Russian people. The Russian revolutionary movement has a long tradition behind it. Herzen, Belinsky, Chernyshevsky, men famous in the revolutionary movement and in Russian literature as a whole. Lenin took care to build on that tradition. His method of doing so was to do for his generation what they did for theirs, teaching Marxism to the Social Democratic Party and the Russian people in spacious terms. Here is a rough summary of his work. The most thorough exposition of the theory of historical materialism that exists in his long reply to Narodnik falsification of Marxist theory. In volume LL of his selected worlds, extracts from his study LL nearly 200 pages. It is dated 1894, is probably his RST major work, is couched in Russian terms and is unsurpassed to this day. To his controversy with the Narodniki on the future development of Russian capitalism LLS volumes. In the course of it, he made contributions to the analysis of capital which remain for the most part unknown and far less understood in Western Europe and America. Yet it was Marxism applied strictly to the Russian economy. 3. He wrote The Development of Capitalism in Russia, a book of many hundreds of pages. It was a direct application of the most abstract Marxian economic theory to Russia. 4. His work on party building, What is to be done? Is Russian in conception and execution, Marxist classic though it is. 5. His special work on the agrarian question in Russia stands alone. It is a masterpiece of Marxism, but on Russia. 6. His study of American agriculture, made in 1913, is a unique masterpiece. He did it specially to illustrate certain aspects of the problem of Russian agriculture. It is on this that the Russian social democratic movement lived. These were the theoretical and propagandist foundations of the party. This was the work which guided the agitational press of Bolshevism. The Bolshevik Party was rooted in the day-to-day work, in industrial and mass struggles, to a degree compared to which our modest efforts can claim comparison only in good intentions. Only an armor-plated ignorance could think of the Bolshevik leader as anything else but an advocate of mass activity. But as a leader he considered it his special task to provide those thousands of party leaders, propagandists, and agitators with material and method by which they could educate themselves and others. In this way, As Trotsky says, he also educated himself. This was no work of an exile. It began from the day he came to St. Petersburg, writing leads about conditions in a factory, reading Capital to small circles of Russian workmen. In his propagandist work he was nakedly, unashamedly, and belligerently theoretical. In his study of the development of capital in Russia, he prelixed an essay on Marx's economic theory so as not to have to refer to the theory too often in the text, which nevertheless is packed with quotations from Capital. This was the Leninist method. It is the only method for building a Bolshevik party. It is the only way to combat bourgeois ideology. It was necessary in Russia FTY years ago, where large sections of the population were permeated by hostility to Tsarism and the existing regime, and where a long line of great writers had enunced and developed the revolutionary tradition. Furthermore, in the 90s Marxism swept Russia. Marxist books were bestsellers. Compare the modern United States, the most bourgeois country in the world, where the workers are permeated with bourgeois ideology. Isn't it clear that we today need to begin this work? Isn't it clear that without it the party not even begin to become a mass American party? How ridiculous it would have been if Lenin had been told that the articles about unions in the Iskra were teaching the Russian workers Marxism. And we? Let the reader now look at the list of pamphlets, brochures, etc. published by the pioneer publishers in the old days, from the draft program of the Comintern, Germany What Next, the Chinese Revolution, the Spanish Revolution in Danger, Whither France, etc., etc., and the corresponding articles in the New International. That was one period, one party, aiming at one group of workers and contacts. We have made a big turn to the masses. But in our theoretical conceptions and our practice, how vast is the difference? The great danger is that we shall just say, well, let X write a pamphlet, or Y write two. Then when we get some more forces we shall write some more. That approach is false to the core, empirical, superficial, and a positive obstacle in the progress and development of the party. We shall not get very far that way. The more we consider this question, the more we can see the special character of the problem with which we are faced in the United States. The classics of Marxism are European in origin and content. They require more than an ordinary knowledge of European history, and particularly by an American worker. In the L92838 days it did not matter much where we began with the Communist Party members and the radicals. Today, when we have to give a class or a piece of literature to a contact, we begin perhaps with the Communist Manifesto. For us who aim at becoming a mass party, this in VE cases out of 6 is anomalous and will increasingly become so. Every European worker of today who reads the Communist Manifesto with his European experiences, his school studies, and the daily life around him, social, political, literary, and artistic, at once experiences a tremendous illumination that has solid concrete associations. A French worker who reads class struggles in France, the 18th Brumaire, or the Civil War in France, a German worker who reads revolution and counter-revolution, or the Peasant War in Germany, and the history of his own country made significant for him as never before. Capital is not only a study of abstract capitalism. It is the history of English capitalist development, and there is no introduction to the history of Great Britain. The last section on primitive accumulation is the historical garment of the logical capitalist development of Western Europe. For the average American worker these books as a beginning are alien. Doubtless if he reads one he is impressed with its power and brilliance and learns something. But what they cannot give to him in sufficient measure is that sense of reality of the development of his own country, that feeling that in addition to the daily class struggle, he is part of something beyond himself that is the beginning of theoretical Bolshevism and the rejection of bourgeois ideology. Such historical data, knowledge, general reading, social experiences as he has, the structure in which his theoretical experiences must grow, are American. We have to begin now, not to write a few pamphlets but to build up the American counterparts of the Communist Manifesto, the 18th Brumaire, and perhaps even more important, the American counterpart of What is to be Done? We do not wait until we become a large party to do these things. This is the way to prepare ourselves and all our supporters for the gaining of forces and the building of the Revolutionary Party. If in time among our efforts, we can manage at last to get one such solid pamphlet that does for United States history or the development of the labor movement or any such topic what these pamphlets do for Europe, and catch some of their spirit, we have the possibility, not only of immediate response but, in time, of reaching an ever-widening circle of concrete rewards. This is precisely what Lenin set out to do with a grandeur, breadth, and vision that are astonishing even after years of familiarity. In every eld he posed proletarian ideology against bourgeois ideology. It is impossible to build an American mass party with our propaganda consisting of Marx on France and Germany, Lenin on Russia and Trotsky on Stalinism and Spain, supplemented by the present labor ideon. It is impossible for a number of average workers to become Bolsheviks unless on the basis of some systematic penetration into American development. Good Stalinists, yes. Good Trotskyists in the old days, the very old days? Perhaps not today, for what we are doing, no. That is the RST point. The second is less easy to grasp but more important in the long run. For the implications of this orientation go much, much deeper. Not only do raw workers need this Americanization. The party membersum the highest to the lowest need it also. And 01 has any serious grasp. An imar/ism, can handle the doctrine or teach it, unless he is, in /mr/jr/rlnrr.l, he /r1r_wnjrporalnirix, an exponent of it in relation to the social life and development around him. The dialectical progression, the various _mg cent_up cent structure, history, economics and philosophy, all the principles and doctrines of Marxism were evolved from a profound and gigantic study by its founders of European history, of European politics, of European literature, of European philosophy. The principles have universal application. But to the extent that the conditions from which they were drawn are not familiar to the Marxists, they remain to a greater or less degree abstract, with innate potentialities for confusion and mischief. Either the would-be Marxist must have some serious knowledge of European history in its broadest sense, constantly renewed, amplified and developed, or the principles of the doctrine must have been incorporated, worked over, and made to live again in a study of the economic structure, social development, history, literature, and life of the country with which he has been many years familiar. Only then is he on the road to becoming a serious exponent and contributor to the doctrine. In fact and in truth it is only until one had dug the principles of Marxism for himself out of his own familiar surroundings and their historical past that the Marxism of Marx and Engels, Lenin or Trotsky and the famous European Marxists truly stand out in their universal application. Not only is this so. It would be a miracle if it were not so. Not only is it so for analysis, for propaganda, or for agitation. It is, abstracted from the question of personality, the basis of socialist tendency and Bolshevik morale. The Bolshevik solidity which must be the core of those who may come to us, the capacity to stand all pressures, must be rooted in a deep, rich, wide concept of American development. The masses may not need it. But for the party cadres of this period it is imperative. To the degree that we teach this to masses, we develop and reinforce the hostility to American bourgeois society which is the objective result of capitalism in this stage of its development. Proletarian ideology is not merely a matter of theoretical analysis. It is the weapon and armory with which we must arm and surround the American working class and particularly those who face the enormous tasks confronting us in the present period. Unless it is rooted in the American environment and in such terms as the American worker can grasp, we cannot lift them above the instinctive class struggle, sharp as that will inevitably become. Isn't this what Lenin meant by the socialist consciousness which the party carries to the working class? Every principle and practice of Bolshevism needs to be translated into American terms. Historical materialism, the Marxian economic analysis, the role of the party, the relation between democracy and socialism, the relation between the trade union and the party, reformists and revolution, the role of social democracy, the theory of the state, the inevitability of socialism. C/CR_/ one of these can be taught, developed, demonstrated from the American economic, social, and political development. The American Revolution, the Civil War, the Knights of Labor, the populist movement, the Southern economy, the tremendous history of the CIO, the development of the two major parties, the political and social contributions of Paine, Jefferson, the Wilson administration, the New Deal, the NRA, the American dollar civilization, the rise and decline of the American Socialist Party, Eugene Debs, John L. Lewis. The Marxist analysis of all this is the material of our education, of our propaganda, of the creation of a Bolshevism which will break a path for us to the American masses. The ideas and principles of Marxism must be boldly and uncompromisingly presented to the American workers. The great European classics must be used, not only for their own sake, but as a means of explaining the American development. With such a party, we shall not be able to educate our members and give to those with whom we come in contact what they will increasingly be looking for. On the basis of our mass work, when they come to us, they will be able to feel that they belong to us. This is not only a necessary and imperative supplement to our work, it is our special contribution to the American labor movement. The two complement each other and complete what is known as scientific socialism. If one aspect is ignored, neglected, or superficially dealt with, then the other assumes an unchecked momentum of its own and does not even bring the rewards which the efforts lead us to expect. Conclusion. At the meeting on the American question which preceded the 1944 convention, I listed 3 propagandist points as ones on which we should center our attention. L. The Americanization of Bolshevism. 2. The stratification of production. 3. Internationalism. Points number 2 and 3 will have to wait. I have tried here to abstract propaganda and agitation and education from work among the masses. But such an abstraction has all the one-sidedness of an abstraction. In actual life the mass work will guide and shape the theoretical approach at every stage. Contact with the proletariat usually results in that. But the theoretical work will guide the mass work also. Let me here conclude with the question, propaganda, agitation in its relation to the fundamental question of the building of the party. The American mass party will not be built by us or by the Canaanites. Groups of Virginia miners, West Coast sailors, Southern sharecroppers, Pittsburgh steel workers, all sorts of left formations will coalesce in time and hammer out a unit organization. They will bring their qualities. Our task is to form such a strong nucleus that the coalescence will take place around us, or even if that does not take place, our special contribution will be Marxism and the theory and practice of Bolshevism. But to do this we have to gather a nucleus of a few thousands, of whom 75°/0 will be American workers, men and women, instinctively hostile to bourgeois society, who are workers, have been workers and who have no other prospect in life except to be workers. They and only they can build a mass party. They are the only real mass propagandists and agitators, day after day. They exist in tens of thousands already and capitalism will create more and more thousands for us. But they need to be given, not prospects of a happy life and higher wages, but a method of thought and a conception of social development that makes their own lives and efforts intelligible to them in national and international C11TLS. They need to know that in Marxism and the Revolutionary Party they have something which, even if far from being completely understood, yet is theirs. Proletarian thought, proletarian method must be for them a challenge to the bourgeoisie at all points, defeating it in theory as the workers will one day defeat it in practice. For them it must be a theory which marks those who adhere to it from all others, giving them pride and confidence and the consciousness of a great superiority to all however influential or famous who do not accept Marxism. That is Bolshevism. That is what Lenin in his day and with his problems from the start strove to create. It is with such people that we can in time grow rapidly. From now and henceforth there will be increasingly rapid breaks in the national consciousness and in the social development of the working class. This class will increasingly throw off substantial numbers of workers breaking with the traditional and petty bourgeois ideologies. If within their own environment and of their proletarian origin, there are trained and conscious Marxists, each of these can form at critical stages the rallying center of dozens and perhaps scores of adherents. The workers in the US have no allegiance to any traditional workers' parties as have the workers of Europe. Broadly speaking, the whole ELD is open, and by laying the necessary foundation with thoroughness and cadence we can legitimately expect the American workers as they respond to declining capitalism will indeed it impossible to pass us by. Concrete proposals. Obviously from the whole argument above, this will be no list of articles or proposals for columns which solve the difficulties of the party. I therefore merely indicate the following as immediate concrete steps for the next period in the direction outlined. I must revert to what is proper logical order, smiley face, the new international A. Through straight articles or book reviews, we need a preparation for indispensable pamphlets, L. A series of studies of the American labor movement. AF of L and IWW and then AF of L and CIO. 2. The Civil War as the American Bourgeois Revolution. Trotsky wanted to write a history of the Civil War. This is the theoretical basis for the coming social revolution. 3. The American Revolution of 1776. From here flow all the ideology and current social thought of the country, Constitution, Bill of Rights, Founding Fathers. We have to start breaking that up, as Marxists. From this should come in time 2 full-length pamphlets, L. The Communist Manifesto of America, an analysis of America's development from 1776 to today. 2. An analysis of the labor movement and its role in American history with special emphasis on the AF of L and the CIO. These should be our permanent standby. They should last forever or at least until socialism, and all our classes should begin with them and immediately air, side by side, the Communist Manifesto, etc. They must bear our stamp, our label. B. The whole theoretical discussion of accumulation, with a practical application to the economics of the government spending, must begin. If we do 2 or 3 articles in a year, we have done well. But we must begin. See the Socialist Party, the beginning of the CP in this country, the Third Party, studies of these, not academic but in the Leninist manner, for our own education and the education of the workers, must begin to appear in the journal. With articles on Bolshevism and its beginnings, as a historical standard of comparison, we shall begin to create theoretical premises for an American Bolshevism and in time do our own what is to be done. D. The writings of Marx, Engels, Plekhanov, and the other classics on dialectical materialism must end a place in the paper. Not every month or every 3 months but steadily, so that we consciously begin to illuminate our own work with the Marxist scientific method. We, being what we are, the above divisions are in descending order of importance. American development comes first in time and energy and space. But we have to whirl systematically at the other, too. Here are 2 things we have to do. A. The writings, letters, etc., of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Serge, Trotsky, on America have a value far beyond their scattered character. They must be collected, annotated, and published. Lenin on Britain is a famous and very precious volume in Britain. Lenin's 2 letters to the American workers, for example, should be at once reprinted in the paper. B. We have to start reprinting and annotating some carefully chosen classics of American revolutionaries. For example, David Walker's Appeal, speeches of Wendell Phillips, etc. The Negro question here, as Marxist interpreters, the ELD is ours, Negroes and Populism, Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, the Garvey Movement, whatever sensuous work we do here will not only educate ourselves but will be gobbled up by the Negro people, masses, and intellectuals alike, and progressive white workers. Party pamphlets we need 2 at once, L. What is the Workers' Party? 2. The Labour Party. They should be serious pamphlets, both cast in a historical mold. Both pamphlets should be carefully coordinated, so that the reader who reads them both should have a clear but restated idea of the development of the labor movement and of the function of the two parties. Closely linked with this must be the publication of a formal declaration of principles and general program. This is a crying necessity. Labor Action and the pamphlets. A substantial section of the paper must read in popular form the work done on this propagandist effort. Some of the pamphlets or extracts from them must actually appear week after week in the paper. Articles in the NI can be summarized with suitable extracts. The party program and explanatory articles must constantly appear in the paper. There must be a constant tie-up, literary, political, and promotional, between the N1, the solid propagandist pamphleters, and the paper. Reviews of books should play an important part in the paper. They must not be watered down. Two reviews which have appeared or will appear in the NI have every place in the paper, one by Schachtman on Wilkie's One World and another on Wexler's study of John L. Lewis. Life, Time, The Saturday Evening Post, Collier, L00/E, constantly have articles of the most serious type by highly qualified writers who do not write down. These are read by millions. A recent article in Life on capitalism and the free market is a case in point. These and not articles in the New York Times should be the target of systematic, comprehensive, and fully Marxist replies by elaboration. Life writes on the free market? Good. We write the Marxist view of the free market. The Saturday Evening Post writes about cartels and monopolies. Next week we write one or two articles on monopolies and cartels, exposing their superficiality and preaching our own view. We say that the classic work on monopolies is Lenin's imperialism. We refer to our book Service. We refer to a current article in the NI. We denounce cartels, but we teach, we explain, we deliberately lift the worker above his daily struggles. Education. The above document is not a programmatic document. Once the theoretical necessity is grasped, then the organizational arrangements, the courses of study, etc., are, to start with, a matter of collaborative effort. This, however, must be said. This document repudiates entirely that conception of education which sends out documents about the speeches of Roosevelt and lists of war plots and war scandals. From J.R. Onson C.L.R. James, Education, Propaganda, Agitation, Post-War America and Bolshevism, October 1944, PTS. 2 and 4.